Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining today's panel. I know the sun's out and it's a good day to probably be outside, so thank you so much for taking the time to come and listen to our panel on leading AI-driven newsrooms. So AI is shaping how we edit, report, and distribute news. So the one remaining question we have is, how do we use the tool in a way that is responsible and doesn't compromise trust, accuracy, or even jobs? So today I am joined by Gina. I would just like to acknowledge that Gina and Joshua were unable to be here in person, but they both will be joining us virtually. We're just still waiting for Joshua to log on. So thank you, Gina, for making the time today. Today, I have an incredible lineup of speakers who are not just theorizing AI, but are actively using it in their newsrooms. So today, I'm joined by Joseph Al-Madi, who is the AI and news strategy for Swedish Radio. And then we have Gina Chu, who is the executive editor for SEFMO. And then we have Khalil Kasmali. Thank you, Khalil, for stepping in at the last minute. Khalil graciously has stepped in into our panel at the very last minute. He is the head of special projects at The Conversation. So firstly, just to begin the discussion, each panelist, Joseph and Gina, are just going to share a short presentation on the ways in which they have implemented AI into their newsroom and what that experience has been like. And then we're just going to have a discussion about that. And I would like for you guys just to also be part of the conversation. So I would encourage everybody, if you do have questions, please hold on to them for the very end. We do want this to be an engaging conversation. So Joseph, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I work as news commissioner for Swedish Radio, which is a national public broadcaster of Sweden. My job is basically to nurture strategic development in our more than 40 newsrooms at SR. For us, the main currency as a public media is trust. Without the trust of the audience, we are nothing. So the thing for us with AI is we need to use it in a way that strengthens our journalism and strengthens our relation to the audience. I guess the conclusion so far from all the smart people we have heard here during this conference is that we need to move fast without breaking things, right? For us, the question we asked ourselves a few years ago when we started to think about how are we going to use Gen AI was this simple one: why? We came up with the answer: to serve the audience better. Yes, we have a very simple AI strategy at Swedish Radio, and it's basically about getting our journalism to the audience, strengthen the relationship with the audience, and being able to move resources to journalism from other things that we need to do. So we use AI, generated Gen AI in different ways at SR. I will just state the obvious. Journalism, quality journalism, and AI-generated content is not the same thing, right? We all agree on that. I mean, sometimes in the discussion about new tech, the shiny new things, this seems to get lost. This is what we are about. This is what we try to give the audience every day at the Swedish Radio. Quality journalism, here from our reporters in Ukraine. And these people will never be replaced by robots. I will give you a simple example of how we use and implement AI solutions at SR. We do many things that most media companies, especially the bigger ones, do today. I mean, we have headline suggestions, we do transcriptions from our podcasts to help people with hearing difficulties. And our reporters can use AI tools to process huge amounts of data. I will give you an example of something that's not very new and shiny. Some of you might think even that it's not a cool thing. For me, as a news nerd, I find it fascinating in its simplicity. We call it the angle body, vinkelkompisen in Swedish. So, what are our values as a public service company? Well, this. We strive to be objective, credible, independent. We want to give diverse perspective and voices. This is what we want to be. Like many media companies, hundreds around the world, we use a user needs model for news. We are, as many news companies, news providers, good at the update function, giving you the latest in a story. But we sometimes forget to give you the other angles of a story. And our tool, the Angle Body, is a way to help our staff to remember that. You know, that the many stories can be told in so many ways. We don't have to be stuck with update me functions. We can educate, give new perspectives, surprise the audience sometimes, and maybe even inspire. And of course, the guiding functions. Our producers and reporters, we are trying this function right now, but everyone will be able to use this in just a short while. And so far it's working well. I mean, ideas coming from a AI assistant service or tool will probably never be better than the best human ideas. But it might help you along the way. And it works like this. This story is in Swedish. I guess you know it anyway. A producer at one of our news desks can just insert this story into the Angle Body, and this is what happens. You can use a text, the transcribed text, or just the URL. So propose new angles and use our news needs model. I want to understand. Give me perspective. Guide me. What counts as ethical behavior for Swedish ministers? Well, you get the idea. It's just a simple tool, and it's, again, not the most shiny example of how a media organization can use Gen AI. But for us, it's a way of turning strategy into action and being able to reach a bigger audience, especially on our digital platforms.
Thank you, Joseph, for those insights. Oh. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Joseph, for those insights. Online, we do have Joshua, who is the founder of Datafied. So I am going to hand it over to Gina, who's also just going to share what it is that they're doing in their newsroom. Gina?
Hi. I'm sorry I can't be there. Really sorry. Actually, I'm missing one of the few good years that seems to have good weather in Perugia. And now I'm in New York where it's raining. So like I'm really unhappy. Plus missing the pasta with the truffles. So a couple of quick things. And I just be slightly schizophrenic. One, you know, I can talk in terms of what Semaphore does. And then I can talk a little bit in terms of my other interests in sort of trying to rethink how AI is going to change journalism. But if I just start with Semaphore, the thing to know about Semaphore is we're a very small newsroom. We got 30-something people. And the timing is actually perfect because about 2 minutes before I got on this call, I just sent out a note to our newsroom for a whole suite of tools we've just built in Google Docs, which is what we work in. They're very simple tools, as you might expect. There's a copy editing tool, headline suggestions, one that searches for related stories and summarizes them so you can do much more quick searching, and one that provides different perspectives on your story, which is to say, it would sort of, it gives you examples of how people might react to your story, so that you get a sense of whether there are perspectives that you should be thinking of that you might not otherwise have. All of this was written by three of us who have very little modern coding experience. The last time I actually did coding was about 45 years ago. And we all sort of knocked these things out in somewhere between a couple of hours and maybe a day, built these tools, fit them into our Google Suite, and there they are. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll probably just keep adding and adding more tools. Among the things I would love to build, a multilingual search engine. I want to build a tool, frankly, that will take multiple stories on the same topic and tell me where they all agree on, what facts they agree on, which facts are unique to a particular story, and how each news organization has framed the stories. Earlier today, I was on another panel in Perugia, remotely, where a group of us, Joel Simon from CUNY and Elizabeth from ACOS, announced the launch of our new tool to provide journalists safety and security information through a bot, and I'm happy to talk about that too. So I think there's a huge range of possible things, leaving aside the obvious questions of IP issues and accuracy and hallucination, all of which I'm happy to talk about, and how those can be minimized and cut down. But I just wanted to take a moment to sort of take the big step back, and I think that the question that was posed, why use AI, is a critical one. And I think it's important for us to sort of really take this moment to understand, I think, two things. One is that the information landscape is going to change, whether we like it or not. People are going to use generative AI. They will get wrong answers, but they will live with it, because that's the way people work. And so we wind up going to war with the audience that we have, not the audience that we would like to have. This will become the way people get information, and we have to learn how to adapt to it, albeit while holding up, our mission and our standards. The other thing I think that we need to do, and I don't think we do it enough, is that we need to come to this from a community and audience-centered point of view, not from what we as journalists do point of view. We are very protective of our place in the world. We're very protective of how we think of what we do. And I think we need to spend far more time thinking about what is it that audiences, communities, really want and need, and how can we provide them with that information. We're tempted to think about the information that we create in a particular way, and yet at the same time, people, how do I put this? So people have different needs. I can think of stories that could be created that are based around the information that I already have. So I don't need to read a 1,200-word story if there's only 300 words in there that actually are fresh to me. But somebody else might need 800 of those words, and somebody else might need 1,400 words and more context. We couldn't do that before. We can now. This is a huge change in scale. We can do stories in an interrogatory way, where you can start asking questions of, what happened yesterday? Well, there was a fire on your street. Oh, I know about that. Tell me about the next story. Or, oh my God, did anybody die? What was the cause? And you can think about how information flows and works differently in a world where information, comes to us. And I think the final thing is, I think whenever we think about new technologies that have come, whether it's with cars and horses, or whether it's with the internet and news and so on, we've tended to want to hold on and define some mythical golden age that we have had, and how we need to protect that age. And I will just say, and maybe this is the controversial comment, I'll just say frankly that journalism has not served audiences particularly well over the years. We have missed out entire communities. In the US, certainly, the coverage of women's suffrage was terrible for many years. The coverage of civil rights was not good. AIDS was ignored. The LGBT community was not well covered. We have an opportunity with a new set of technology to rethink what our mission is and how we can serve people better now that we can scale better. I admit this is a terrible time for journalism and resources, but we do have a tool. And I think it's time for us to reimagine ourselves through the public service mission that we say we have to help serve the people. Sorry about the polemic, but I had to get that off my chest. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Joshua? If you're online, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to just follow, suit with Gina to apologize for not being able to make it in person. You can hold, the visa and migration policies of the world accountable for that. But while that is behind us, I probably will speak almost following the same way that it's gone about it, and that's that for us at Datafight, and then I'll also speak to how I think that generally newsroom leaders need to begin to navigate, or if you like, harness the value that AI is bringing to the work that we do, and help us also to push the needle around what trust and value that we can give to our audiences. Identified, one thing that we set out to do when we started as an organization is to democratize data for journalism, is to democratize data journalism, but it's also to begin to present some form of business model or sustainability model that data journalism or data-driven reporting can provide. And so when the opportunity came to, when generative AI came, one of the ways that we thought to look at it is to ask the question from, the massive amount of data that we've always had, that we continue to mine, and how that can then be repurposed to do much more than what we've always been able to do, right? We brag to say that if you take away the official data, National Bureau of Statistics in Nigeria, we will be the second socioeconomic data collector, curator in the country. And if anybody doubts that, you can ask Statista. At 2021, 1 year after we set up, they signed a partnership to make us the data access partner in Nigeria. But when AI came in, we then said, okay, we're not going to just democratize, data journalism. We're probably going to be democratizing journalism with data. But this is an opportunity to democratize data journalism itself for journalists. And we built Nubia, and Nubia AI essentially helps us to, put that data analysis, embellishment with visualization, multimedia, capability in the hands of journalists who we've always trained, but have never been able to go back and use data to tell fantastic stories. So that was one of the ways that we thought, okay, within our storytelling, channel, we're going to give power back to journalists. The other thing we saw was, from our own background, we've always thought hyperlocal in the way that journalism needs to be done. Part of the point that Gina was making about giving value back to the grassroots, communities that we serve, right? And we thought, okay, we've always had data, whether we can talk about provenance later, but you've had World Bank data, every other AFDB data that speaks to communities, cities, continent, and country. What can we do in form of narrative change now that we can use AI to repurpose, the context of Africa, right? What about 1 million stories that you can never tell, but that you've always had the data before now that AI can let you tell? And you're not just telling it in a very synthetic or plastic manner, but you're able to bring, those lived experiences of those communities, those countries together, and, provide that opportunity, if you like, call it socio-political opportunity for Africa to be, reported in the right way now that we have factual ingredients of data to do that. So that was something we thought to do, right? And personalize it in a way that within the distribution channel also, or the elements of journalism, we are also, harnessing AI to do that. Now, I'm trying to play on SDR now, storytelling, distribution, and revenue for those who, understand that. And then that also then opened up for us as a small newsroom of just about 10 to 15 people, that opens an entire new revenue opportunity for us, right? Because if we're able to fully, come out, we have our MVP, thanks to, of course, Journalism AI challenge that we're able to join in 2021. We have an MVP, and we're putting a lot of resources into ensuring that there's reliability and accuracy in the terms of information that Nubia is able to pull out. Is that we are able to provide that balance that we've always lacked in the stories of Africa that is told, first with diaspora population, but also as a way to fact check the misinformation, disinformation that we are able to then do better. So that's pretty much how we are innovating or harnessing artificial intelligence within our own newsroom system. But beyond that is also how you can then scale that up. Right, 3 things that I always say that AI offers is scale, speed, and saliency. And if you sort of put that as a newsroom manager and say, within my workflow, what needs to scale? Don't fight is scaling his ability to tell more than 3-5 stories a week to being able to tell 1,000 stories that are authentic, original, and fact-based. That's scale, right? At the level of speed is just like Gina was giving and Asala also mentioned, the other speaker mentioned, ability to quickly, turn around one story into different languages or even, embellish many things into it. That's the speed at which you can walk around your story or your content being SEO, ready, making it, get 5 different, headlines, make one story available to multiple audiences. In terms of speed at which you can do that. What you will definitely have to wait for, the mood and also the mind frame of your editor, to be able to have a good day before now. And in terms of that saliency is then that place where you can then make it relevant to the audience that you want to serve, which I think in terms of trust, they've lost trust in us, not just because of some of the challenges of repression, some of the challenges of bias, but also in terms of not telling the story from their lens, right? And I think that that's what this offers us, because you can then harness much of the user-generated content. You can imagine how we can repurpose most of the social media conversations that are going on online, right, about different issues, of lack of access, of underrepresented communities, or undervalued, systems and policies or infrastructure, and just taking that, mining that old just hashtag and telling a different story in a very salient and very, fact-driven way. I think that those are opportunities that newsroom can pay attention to. Not talking to localization, language, and all of those resources that we can lend to. I guess the last thing I'll say, because I know there's still much to talk about later, will be how we've gone about this is ensuring that we are not just doing a top-down leadership approach to how we, harness AI in our newsroom. We're ensuring that every colleague is interacting, is interfacing, and is incentivized to play or experiment with AI within their own, work stream or workflow. So if you're a graphic designer, we're telling you, why do you need so much time to make this happen when you can use the resources? What we ensure is that you're transparent, you're able to let us know how you're going about this. And we sort of now have that, co-created, newsroom AI tools and explorations in that manner, which are, of course, guided by our data and AI policy as an organization. And I think that it's just the simple ways that every other newsroom leader or every other newsroom can follow.
Thank you, Joshua. Thank you so much. I just want to turn to Khalil, as Gina has mentioned the importance of audience-centric content. As someone who has advised newsrooms globally on audience-centric strategies, how do you see AI transforming the relationship between journalists and their audience? So, what are some of the strategies for ensuring that AI tools enhance rather than hinder this connection?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess the answer is kind of based on my experience with various newsrooms in different parts of the world. And I think it relates a little bit to what Joshua was saying in terms of the data. So for me, when we're talking about data, audience data, ultimately, we're talking about a better understanding of the audience, right? So I think it's pretty much uncontroversial to say that, the more data that we have about the audience, the better we can understand them. And with AI, or generative AI specifically, especially the tools that we have now, one of the really interesting and powerful things that we can do is move very quickly from, we have quite a lot of data, to insights, right? So insights would mean what we can do with the data, what is it that we know about the audience. Now, if we think about the pre-Gen AI era, so we're talking a couple of years ago, we had a lot of data, but to get the insights, we would potentially need to do quite a lot of analysis ourselves or go to the coders, the developers, etc., and basically ask them, this is the data, can you find X, Y, Z for me? Now, we sort of can bypass those people, and we can look at the data ourselves, do the mining of the data ourselves, do the analysis ourselves, and come up with insights. So I guess what I'm saying is we're accelerating the process of generating insights from the data. So we are accelerating the process of understanding the audiences much better. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is, because of the accessibility of the Gen AI tools and stuff, we are sort of at a point where we can really democratize the understanding of audiences. Because basically, anyone or a lot of people within the newsroom now have access to those tools. If they have access to the data, they can produce the insights themselves. So we're at a point where a lot of people in the newsroom will be able to analyze the data and come up with insights and better understanding of audiences, which is good. And they can do it much faster. Those are two probably the biggest changes that I've seen within newsrooms over the past 2 years.
And then, Joseph, you mentioned that something that we've heard a lot of news organizations say, that we're using AI to enhance our work and not necessarily to replace journalists. So what are the practical ways that you guys are doing it at Swedish Radio?
I mean, for us, it's all about going back to the values. Once again, ask the question, why are you using Gen AI? What is it for? What is it in your values that you want to enhance with AI? For us, it's the quality journalism, basically. For example, we recently launched a news search on our website and mobile app, where the audience can interact with our journalism. And that is, the answers that you get is based only on our quality journalism from 40 different newsrooms within Swedish Radio, not on everything that you can find online. So it's already checked by editors, producers. It's journalism according to our standards. And that's very important for us, to stick to our values.
Gina, so you guys are using AI to automate certain newsroom tasks. So how are you addressing concerns about job displacement, and what strategies are in place to actually upskill teams?
So it's one of my jobs here to give unpopular views. It's not happening at Semaphore, by the way. We've got 35 people. Like, there's no one to replace, right? I mean, we don't even have a copy editing desk. So all this does is help us. And so the tools that were built essentially are, in some cases, doing some things that we would do, but not, but with not enough staff, like proofreading and copy editing, and some tools that essentially are doing things that can extend our reach, and some tools are doing things that we don't do at all, particularly at this point, which is bringing in different perspectives, which obviously we can do, but it's doing something fresh. And many of the other tools that we plan to build will be, some of them will be workflow tools, but some of them will just extend our capabilities to do things that we weren't doing before. So at Semaphore, it's not really a question about, are these tools going to replace anybody? But I spent 11 years at Reuters previously, and where there are a lot of people and there are a lot of tools, and it's entirely possible that some tools could replace people. I just want to be really clear. We are here as an industry to serve people, to serve communities. We are not here to serve journalists. We're not here about trying to save, we're not here to save journalists. We're not really even here in some ways to save journalism. We're here to save public interest information that is useful to communities. If that requires 0 journalists, then our mission is done. It's great. If we were doctors and our job is to improve the public health of a population and require no doctors, isn't the world a better place? I mean, we're not here to make sure that every doctor who exists is hired. We're here to make sure that populations are healthy at the at a cost-efficient, resource-useful way. And so we're here to help the public get information that they need. So I'm not I mean, look, of course I want to be employed, and some of my best friends are journalists, and we would all like to be employed. But I think it's an issue if we put our employment ahead of the mission that we are here for, because after all, we claim all sorts of rights and positions in the world because we serve this mission. So, I mean, look, without sounding like a complete idiot on this, humans are useful and important, especially at this point in the development of AI, because we need to be able to check the work, we need to be able to think about things. We can still do things that AI can't do. But AI can do a lot of things that we can't do. And the trick is not to say, that AI is replacing us or not replacing us. The trick is to figure out what is the best outcome. Think about what it is that humans do well and what it is that machines do well. Tie the two together in what I've called the cybernetic newsroom. We don't want humans to be bad machines, and we don't want machines to be bad humans. What we want is that both sides to do the best they can and find how they work together. I mean, again, sorry for the polemic, but luckily I'm a long distance, so you can't throw anything.
So this question is going to be to both Gina and Joseph. So how are you actually balancing the use of AI and editorial integrity? So you obviously speak about not using AI to save journalism and having this approach of an audience-centric content. So how do you balance the two?
Balance the question
The use of AI and editorial integrity.
I mean, a lot of it really comes down to what's the quality of the information you provide, right? And part of that is really the question of whether it's a public-facing tool or an internal-facing tool. And if it's an internal-facing tool, then generally speaking, you have a human in the loop, and your output is as good or as bad as your humans. And so, if you have a copy editing bot, for example, it will copy edit your work. If it inserts an error, you should catch it. In the same way that if a human copy editor inserted an error, you hopefully would catch it too. Public-facing tools are different. Public-facing tools, are at a very different level of maturity in terms of the AI systems. And one of the things to realize certainly with LLMs, is that the statistical engines, and I think there are a lot of sort of broader questions around this, which is to say, if you ask an LLM a question, even a simple question, it will provide you a different answer every time. I don't mean a wrong answer. I mean that the form of words will be different. And we have not investigated them enough. We have not built out the quality control tools for all of these outcomes. So there's a certain level of systems and checking that we need to build in to be able to have higher confidence that the outputs are robust. That will come in time, but I mean, I will say, organizations like Reuters and Bloomberg and the AP and so on have been using AI-generated stories for ages. They've tended to be template-based, so there's much less variation in the outcome. And as with all systems, they have errors. Those error rates can be tracked. And I would just want to point out that humans have error rates too. If you've ever looked at a newspaper corrections page, you'll realize that humans make mistakes too. The question is, do AI systems make mistakes at a higher rate than humans, or do they make it at a lower rate than humans? And if they make them at a lower rate than humans, then I'd say that's a win. If they make them at a higher rate, then we should probably have a look at the system.
And Joseph, so Gina mentioned the importance of keeping a human in the loop. What does that look like at Swedish Radio?
I mean, for us, as we work now, it's not only about human in the loop, it's actually about human in control. We can never compromise with editorial integrity when we use AI to empower our journalism. And it's, as Gina says, humans are not perfect either. And what comes out of AI-supported journalism is never better than what you have in your data set, right? AI is like humans in that way. It contains the best in us, and it's as bad as the worst in us, right? So what can we do to ensure editorial control and integrity? Well, it's basically to rely on the principles of journalism to check the facts, sometimes with support of AI. But we can never, if we mess up, if we publish with support of AI in some way, and we mess up, we can never blame the tech giants in the US or in China. The fault will be on our side. So we need to stick to our principles, again, the values. Oh, sorry about that.
So Joshua, smaller newsrooms often lack the resources to fully use AI. So what are some of the practical ways that they can integrate AI responsibly?
I think that one sector or one profession that has been, I mean, I don't want to sound, religious now, blessed with open source tools, I think it's journalism, right? And that's also because we provide a public interest, service, right? So I guess what newsrooms, small newsrooms, and I think even big newsrooms should do, is first to, leverage open source, AI tools that are out there, and other forms of, digital public goods that exist out there. The other is ability to collaborate or ride on the wings of the big ones, right? And I guess it's one thing, and I wrote this in one paper at one point, that journalism needs to learn to innovate competition and stop using it to, constrain itself. I think one time that we need to collaborate, in building simple tools that we think, especially if you look at what is described as Global South, or what I call, emerging, nations, is ability to take that our communal, culture and socio-cultural leanings and use that to collaborate to build the kind of technologies that we want. But one of the things that we are leveraging for what I call, localizing AI for, newsrooms in Africa. And the examples are there, even in Nigeria. 2-3 organizations are coming together and, running a hackathon to say, let's build something, using LLM for newsrooms, right? we built about 6, I think, smaller tools for small newsrooms in Nigeria, working with Center for Journalism Innovation and Datafied. Working with, I think that's something to do. The other is also to, not be shy again, to work with technologies, right? And get them into the room. We sort of have this, and I'm going to start to sound like Gina now. We have this heroism that sort of drives us. Oh, we're saving the world. But the truth is that the fuel, the energy that we need to do that is with the audience, is with the people that we're serving. And it's not only when they give us money or donate to our content that we are leveraging them. We can leverage the capacity of the technologies who finds our content good and let them build for us. I guess one thing that I would say I've done very well in the last 10 to 15 years of my career is to work technologies to build the tools that journalism needs. And I've done that very well with over 10 tools and ensuring that I turn technologies to volunteers or building technology for journalism. And I think newsrooms need to embrace that. There are a lot of folks who want to build and leverage open source, leverage collaborative capacity of small newsrooms, and of course leverage the ones of the big newsrooms that are ready to share, and then pay attention to the community that you serve and let the technologies within them also help you develop some of these tools. Thank you.
Thanks, Joshua. Khalil, so your expertise is on audiences. So how can AI be adapted to serve audiences, different audiences effectively?
Yeah, I think it sort of depends on, I guess, the purpose of the organization, the purpose of the journalist. I always sort of try to kind of center everything around that. And I think Gina spoke really well about, audiences, and ultimately journalism is like a service, and we need to provide a service to people, a service that is valuable, and however we can use AI to do that, whether it's different forms of content, whether it's adapting to the different behaviors of people, etc. I guess one thing I wanted to touch on a little bit, which sort of links to this, but also to other things, is I suppose everyone in this room, you are either, you want to use AI, or maybe you are a bit skeptical, and either is fine. If you're leaders and you're in your newsroom, there will be people within the newsroom who are hesitant, and it's never easy to do transformation. It's never easy to do innovation. But I think one of the ways that we can sort of do, well, I suppose a mindset that we can use to sort of really get AI more out there is to be empathetic about how people in the newsroom feel. I get Gina's point that ultimately we are a service, so if there is no need for us to exist, so be it. But also within the newsroom, people are not saying no to AI because they're saying no. There are many reasons why people say no to AI, and I think as leaders, everyone should be more empathetic about why people are saying no. And I've got notes on this because I always sort of fall back to this. But there's so many reasons why people say no. There's a fear of loss and control, uncertainty, fear of losing face, insecurity about their competencies, etc., etc. So many reasons why people say no. Very rarely do people say no just for the sake of saying no. And I think we need to understand that. We need to address those legitimate fears, because once we do that, then we can actually get everyone on board to use AI in a way that makes sense, not just for the newsroom, for the journalists themselves, but then ultimately that translates into doing things that works for the audience as well, which is, I suppose, the ultimate goal.
Speaking of audiences, I would like to open up this conversation to everyone. So if you have a question, if there's a microphone.
Hi, thank you for the panel. It's a bit difficult for me to stand up, so I hope this is okay. I guess this is a question for Joshua or all of the panelists as well. So, Joshua, you mentioned about building a rug for Swedish Radio. I'm really interested in learning a bit more about. Have you discovered anything new about your audience? Have you had any feedback from your audience? Be it quantitative or qualitative conversation. And what are some of the typical use cases from your audience in terms of using this, tool?
Any other question? Or Joseph, you can go ahead and take that one. This was directed to Swedish Radio.
Yes, if I'm not understanding it wrongly, Joshua, you mentioned about building this internal archive, which is public-facing, and your audience can use it to ask questions and get to know more about your journalism.
And we are learning a lot from the audience, of course. I mean, we launched this just a few weeks ago, and basically it's a new search, but it's conversational, and it fishes from all our content. What we learn from the audience is, of course, what are people searching for, which is highly interesting when we do new journalism, of course, news stories. But we also get a pretty clear idea of how to improve the product, depending on what questions we get, how the questions are formulated, and so on. So we try to do this in close contact with the audience, of course. So it should be audience-driven that way.
Any other questions? No. Okay. So I am just going to, this is a general question to the panelists. So what are some of the misconceptions about AI in journalism, and how should newsrooms address this? Anyone want to take it? Gina?
My quick and dirty on this is that, I mean, there are a lot of issues, and we talk about AI, we mean a lot of different things. So I particularly talking about large language models mostly, and there's lots of other different things. I mean, the key thing that we really need to remember about large language models is that they are language models. They are not fact models. They don't actually understand anything about facts, but they can read, if you like, and quote, understand. And that's really the whole point of it, right? When you build a RAG, what you're really doing is you're saying, here's a bunch of documents, read them, and tell me what they say. And I think one of the key things to really understand about LLMs and the fact that, there's a new, basically there's a new model that comes out sort of, every 2 weeks, and all of a sudden you can do something else at a more complex level. For the purposes of journalism, the models are, in fact, very good, and you could sort of stabilize them where they are because they handle language really, really well. And so if we freeze ourselves with the current capability of languages, the real goal that we need to have as an industry is think about what could you do if you had an infinite number of interns who read and understood things, were all very helpful and, slightly stupid, slightly autistic, but really willing to help. And if we had that, what could you do? And I think the thing that we really need to do as an industry is have more imagination and more creativity about the use cases and be far more attuned to what it is that the people we're serving, the communities that we're serving really need, and what new communities we could serve with those billion interns.
So we have about 2 minutes left, so I'm just going to ask Joshua, if you want to complete it, just finish us off. What are the biggest ethical dilemmas AI presents for journalism, and how should organizations prepare for it?
I think the simple, straightforward way I say this is all the ethical dilemmas that journalism has presented to the world is the same that AI presents, and that's because journalists or newsroom workers are the ones moderating AI to present whatever it is presenting, right? So if your biases, if your inability to prove, to balance, what you're using to prompt, right? If you're using wrong information, to drive or as a knowledge base for how you use different LLMs, then those ethical challenges will arise, right? But we can talk of the general ones, which is the transparency, the news framing capabilities or ethical lines that, journalism allows us to, abide by in terms of rules. And I guess that's how to look at it. The other one is also some of those, I think, exclusionary or places we don't want to get to, that we also then allow AI not to reach, or we then use AI as the bait to get us there. Some of those things, I guess, are what I would see as the ethical challenges. I mean, the word continue. It's interesting when the concept of news desert was my first travel to America, but I've seen it more and more in Nigeria, in the whole of Africa. And I'm not talking of news that are based on geography. I'm talking of news that are based on underserved communities, underserved groups, underserved, audiences, right? That in itself is unethical. The fact that we are sort of changing, we are sort of excluding a segment of our population, conversations that we should be having that we are not having. I guess those are more behavioral, things that I think we should be dealing with as we harness or use AI for efficiency. An ethical journalist or newsroom will know how to, sort of set a guardrail in the way they use AI at the end of the day. So let's teach more of all those ethics of journalism, and remind ourselves, maybe put a sticky note every time we're using any of the AI and say, as you use this, remember these ethics. Otherwise, every other thing we talk about, hallucination, I guess even when the journalist is fatigued, he probably would do the same. I mean, so for me, is those things are what comes with technology. Technology is always iterative, and the more it grows, the better it becomes, right? Those are limitations. Those are not ethical flaws that we want to hold as a reason not to embrace or the reason not to explore. Journalism is a profession of inquiry. Journalism is a profession of experimentation. That's what investigative journalism is all about. And I think we want to dive right in and see how how we can use it as a tool, just like we will use mobile, socials, and every other thing that we've ever had. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua, for closing us off. And thank you to all the panelists for joining me today. And thank you for the audience for listening. Bye, Gina. Bye, Joshua.